Welcome to the 60s, the decade of change. Come with us as we take a journey back in time to visit the leaders of the civil rights movement, the music scene, the feminist movement, and the politics of the decade. So turn on, tune in, and drop out.
To start off, one should know about the civil rights movement in the 1960s, which was considered a turning point for the rights of millions of Americans. At the forefront of this movement was Martin Luther King Jr. Martin Luther King Jr. was an African American activist and freedom fighter who was considered one of the most influential of the 1960s. On August 28, 1963, King delivered his most famous speech, the I Have a Dream speech, at the Lincoln Memorial in the nation's capital, during the famous March on Washington. The ideas that he presented in the speech helped to influence hundreds of thousands across the nation, and this speech has been cited as one of the main catalysts for the civil rights movement. King was a peaceful leader, conveying his messages through peace and compassion, rather than violence or anger. His uplifting and powerful speech was delivered to more than 250,000 Americans, helping to incite the revolution which began giving equal rights to all. King's speech was crucial to the 60s because it exemplified the civil rights movement that was taking place at the time. It helped to spark a movement that ended up causing real and important change. His speech spread a message of peace, freedom, and unity across the nation and the world.
While King's influence is undoubtedly huge, on the other end of the spectrum, wild changes were occurring, and rock music was about to change forever. In the late years of the 60s, Jimi Hendrix first released his album, Are You Experienced, which became an instant hit in Europe as well as in Northern America. By using his revolutionary guitar talent and creating a whole new following for music, Jimi Hendrix quickly became one of the most influential rock artists of all time. Hendrix wooed his audience with his incredible stage presence, as well as his energy, which was displayed through seemingly effortless performances, by using his techniques and tricks such as playing the guitar with his teeth or behind his back. Hendrix never failed to blow fans away from the first song at a concert. Similar to Hendrix, Gloria Steinem left her mark on society by revealing the reality of the Playboy Club. After working undercover alongside other bunnies, Steinem was a journalist, wrote and published her experience with Playboy, and explained how the life of a bunny was nothing like what it had been advertised to be. The club would tax them at any chance they could, and the men treated women strictly as objects. Her article was driven by the belief that sexual revolution will fail if men are the only ones able to define it. While Hendrix and Steinem held a strong hold on the arts and culture of the 60s, JFK was quickly becoming one of the most prominent and influential presidents of the U.S. has ever seen.
John F. Kennedy was our 35th President of the United States during the 60s. One of the biggest challenges Kennedy faced during his presidency was the Cuban Missile Crisis in 1961. When Kennedy approved a plan to send in 1,400 CIA-trained Cuban exiles in an amphibious landing at the Bay of Pigs in Cuba. It was an attempt to overthrow the communist leader Fidel Castro, but it failed badly, and a lot of the men that were sent in there didn't make it out. Later on that year, Kennedy met with Soviet leader Nikita Khrushchev, and Kennedy gave one of his famous speeches through a televised broadcast. Khrushchev dismantled the missile threat and signed the Nuclear Test Ban Treaty, along with British Prime Minister Harold Macmillan. This was one of the greatest victories Kennedy did during his presidency. The significance that Kennedy brought to America during the 60s was optimism, the belief that good ultimately predominates over evil in the world. He was charismatic, inspirational, and an idealist. Here's one of the most famous quotes of all time.
And so, my fellow Americans, ask not what your country can do for you, ask what you can do for your country.
Now that we've covered the important figures of the 1960s, let's move on to the artistic design of our mural. The style of our mural is pop art, a style made famous in the 1960s by artists like Andy Warhol and Roy Lichtenstein. One of the primary goals of pop art was to blur the lines between fine art and popular culture, with many pop artists taking influence from commonplace objects, everyday life, and celebrities. Our mural is roughly based off of Andy Warhol's screen prints of Marilyn Monroe, which consisted of multiple images of Marilyn Monroe in evocative colors such as pink and blue. We aim to capture the themes of unity and repetition with how we chose to position the faces and the glasses on our mural. Furthermore, we wanted to emphasize the theme of contrast to show the changes that was brought by the 1960s, which we achieved by using unconventional colors.
Thank you for letting us take you on this groovy trip. And as an American war hero would say from the Vietnam War, goodbye the 1960s.